Howdy folks, I'm Hank Sheffer, and welcome to another true life story right here with Jack San Felice on Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.
I had read where some folks had gone up there, and there was a story in one of the papers. They'd visited the Wave Cave, they called it. And I said, wait a minute, how old are these kids? And started looking at the story and went back and found a newspaper. Well, they were only 19 or 20. They don't know any better. They don't know that that cave was one of the most famous caves and the largest cave I've ever found in the Superstition Mountains. I didn't find it first. It had been found in the time of the Indians, probably in the time of the ancient Indians. And so I said, you know, I got to do a little more research about these guys and straighten these guys out. That's the Apache Kid's cave. It's not a wave cave, although you could say it looked like a wave from outside, from looking at it, or outside or inside. Now, a little description of the cave is, well, it's about 150 feet long. The opening is about 70 feet, and it goes back about 35 feet. And I'm going to say it's probably 20 feet high inside of there. If you've never gone into an opening like this in the Superstition Mountains, you got to go to this one. Because I'm sure the outlaws of the old days, oh, by the way, on my way up to the Apache Kid's cave the first time, I found an old running iron right at the bottom, the base. Right at the base of the trail, before we take the trail in, I found an old running iron, and that's used to put your brand over somebody else's brand, but that's a story for another day. Well, it seems that two newspaper reporters in the 1890s were doing a search of the Apache Kid and where he could have been. Well, so they're looking in some stories and looking in tales, and said there was a cave, and they said that he visited Jim Bark. And Bark was one of the first cowboys in the mountains. It was called Bark's Ranch before it was called the Quarter Circle U Ranch. That's a tongue twister off Peralta Road. So dig some more, find it. And lo and behold, not only is there the newspaper article from 1897 on the Apache Kid's cave, but there is a sketch of the outside and then from looking in outside in that 1897 paper. So I make a copy of that and off I'm running. We're going to find this place. You can see Quarter Circle U from it. It's elevated. You got to go past the old Carney Mine Spring. That's in the directions. I had been at Carney Mine Springs many times. Matter of fact, you pass right by it now on the Lost Gold Mine Trail. And that's a story for another day, how that thing was laid out. So we get down there, and they said it's on the side of Three Sisters Rocks. Well, we get up there, you can't see it. You can't see it on a bright sunlight day. You can't see an opening to a cave because you're way down at the base by the boundary line of the wilderness, and it's up there by there's holes everywhere. How do you know which one it's going to be? Well, I looked and I saw a shadow among some big bouldered area up there, all rocks. I saw a shadow, and I got my newspaper article out, and I looked at it. I said, you know, that shadow's weird. We're going to go up there, and if it's nothing, but at least we'll have a great view. So we climb up there. As we're climbing up, we go past an ancient Indian ruin. There's some ruins where in a small cave, some old stones have been laid over it, and we found some old ancient pottery up there. So you know if there's pottery, that was an ancient Indian place. Probably 800,000 years old, who knows? The ancients lived there. I believe that was a hiding place for them, or maybe even a living place, because the roof had the cave had a lot of smoke smoke signs where soot was on the top. So we're climbing up, and as we're climbing toward it, we want to keep it in our vision all the time. Because in the mountains, if you don't have the vision of something, you go into one little, you channel off into one little canyon, you lose vision of it. So we're taking the vision tour here, and we're going straight to it. This is the nose test. You follow the nose and right in, so we're walking up. And so we're following a little ravine up. And a little ravine is all decomposing granite, okay? All decomposing dacite, rhyolite, whatever. And so, and when you're going up, the last 500 feet, you're going at an angle like this, okay? Hard climb, hard climb. So we finally get up, and there's the cave, and it's huge. The dark spot I saw all the way down by the wilderness line from the old trail to Kearney Mine. Son of a gun, that's it. It's got to be it. So we go up, and we finally get inside of it, and we look out, and it matches the sketch. And the outside matches the sketch from looking at it from the outside. We're here. I was amazed. I was amazed. And the story says that the deer would come in there. There's a spring where water leaks in there. You could stay there. And at the base of the back, there's this crystalline formation. They said it contains salt, okay? Salt. Somehow, salt was in the rock, so, and that leaches out, so the deer and other animals come to that. They know where that place is. And if you were the Apache Kid, you could certainly hide in there because you had water. You could put your horse in there. You could put a horse in there, and you could not be seen from down off Peralta Road. You could not be seen. But when I got up there, we looked out, you could see Jim Bark's ranch. So the story is that after the Apache Kid became an outlaw, and I'll tell you a little story about that. The Apache Kid was a first sergeant of scouts for Al Sieber back in the 1870s, 1880s, during the Apache Wars. He was said to have uncanny vision. And when he was with Sieber, he could say, horses are coming out there. They're about 3 miles away, and there's so many of these and so many of that. He could count the numbers of people through the dust and tell you if they had hats on or not, if they thought they were soldiers or Indians. He had uncanny vision, and he was a superb rifle shot, and he was in excellent physical health. So one time, while the Apache Kid is off with Al Sieber, but he wasn't called the Apache Kid then. He was just called the Kid, okay? He had hung around all the soldiers as a young man, and he was taken liking to by Al Sieber, like I say, a famous Army Scout under General Crook. And while he was out on a foray chasing renegade Apaches, his father's killed. He's murdered by another Indian. The father was murdered because he had stolen away, not really stolen, but he took the affections away of a beautiful young woman who was his mother. And for that, this other man, this other Indian, Apache, had so much hatred. For 20 years he carried this hatred, came back, and he killed the Apache Kid's father. So the Apache Kid, the Kid, I'll call him then, because he was just called the Kid then. So he takes some of his Indian friends, and they go down. They have a Tiswin party, and they bolster their spirits. So he gets them all drunked up, and then they go down to where the killer of his father is. So it was kind of like a code of honor. If somebody kills your father and you know it, you've got to go, you're the son, the oldest son, you've got to go kill that man. And that's what he was doing. So he gets these guys drunk up on Tiswin, which is kind of like an Indian homemade beer. Alcohol, made out of agave plants or even other plants. Anyhow, they get all drunk and they get down there and they kill this guy. They did more than kill him. You know, they stuck their spears in him and do all kind of stuff. And then they're still drunk when Al Sieber sends for him. They wants him to go lead him to another area and go after some more renegades. When he get back there, his guys are all drunked up and they're all carrying rifles. One rule in the Army as Indian Scouts: no drinking, no carrying rifles while you're drinking, and no riding horses while you're drinking. Well, they had violated all of that. And no murders, by the way. No vendetta murders. We've done it all. So not only 3 strikes, you're out, 4 strikes, you're out. So they said, he sold the kid, put yourself in the guardhouse. While he's putting him in the, kid voluntarily goes to put himself, he sets his rifle before Al Sieber, and he goes to where the guardhouse is. And as he's headed that way, there's a fight between the other Apache scouts, who are the Apache police, trying to take the weapons off of the other Indians that went with the kid. So they were fighting over a weapon, the gun goes off, and Al Sieber is shot in the ankle, and he's ruined as a hiker for his life, for life. He's ruined for life as a hiker then. So the Apache Kid is blamed by Al Sieber because he was first sergeant in charge of them, and he violated his duty on 4 counts. So therefore, he became a renegade. They put him in the guardhouse, and they had to serve their time. And when that happened, that shooting happened. He was court-martialed, by the way. Well, the Apache Kid became an outlaw when this occurred. The kid was with a group of other people that were at the old Globe jail in Globe. And they were being transferred by stagecoach from Globe to Riverside and Riverside to Florence. So between Riverside and Florence, the Apache Kid, and it's a story of the kid's escape, and he was never ever captured after that. But on that old trail, by the way, which I found that old stagecoach trail in the exact spot that happened, I was taken there by an old cowboy. He's gone now, but many years ago. Gosh, he was an old man then. He was in his 80s then, so he'd be about 110 now. And he passed away a long time ago. But in any event, he took me where the old stagecoach trail went and showed me the spot, because he was told the legend by his father of where about 7 or 8 Indian prisoners were being taken from Globe by way of Riverside, and then taken from Riverside to Florence, and then they were going to be taken to Yuma and going to the Yuma prison. And while this is happening, and while they stopped at Riverside, one of the interpreters just happened to be there, and he said to the Indians, he was a Mexican, and he said to them, "You're going," and in their language, he could speak Apache fluently. He said, "You're going to Yuma. No Indian ever comes out of there alive." So they were looking to make their escape from Riverside through the mountains before they got to Florence, because then they were going to be a lot more people were going to accompany. It was mostly flat lands, and they were going to ride the stagecoach through. And they would be guarded more closely. Where they were being guarded by the sheriff and one of his deputies and 1 or 2 other people. But the deputy's name was called, his last name was Holmes. He wasn't related to Dick Holmes of the Dutchman fame. He had a nickname, and his nickname was Hunky Dory. And he was a prospector, miner. He was a deputy sheriff at times, a guard. Wherever he could get a job, he would do it. Hunky Dory Holmes even made up a song about himself. And it rhymed. It rhymed with Camptown Races. the old song, Camptown Races, okay? And whenever he walked into a place, he'd be singing that song. Ba 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 da 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 da, and Hunky Dory Holmes, and that's how it ended. Hunky Dory Holmes was, you know, the great guy or whatever. He had some people with him, and one, of course, is Hunky Dory. But it was cold, and it was they left early at daylight from Riverside, and they went up the big hill coming out of Riverside, the old stage route, and then they dipped down and they went up past the wash, and as they're going up a hill, they had all the Indians. First hill, they all got out, and the Indians are looking there saying, white man dumb, we're going to jump the sheriff. Not only was the sheriff riding a horse out there behind the stagecoach, the Indians were behind him, and he was wearing an overcoat because of the cold, and his revolver was underneath the coat. What they did, when they got to this place right across the Ripsey Wash, and Ripsey is a long wash that goes to an old gold mine, and we can go there. Well, as they get out, they're walking behind, and Sheriff Middleton is there, and they move. These guys are all in chains, by the way. They're in hand and feet chains, okay? They grabbed Middleton as they're going up. They got his gun, shot and killed Hunky Dory Holmes. Then they shot and killed the sheriff. So then they get the keys and they unlock themselves and they're gone. Do you know that there were about 8 of them? And I have the whole story of this. 7 of them were all recaptured and executed, or they were killed or executed. For murder, Apache Kid got away and was never, ever captured. Never. And that makes the story of the Apache Kid's cave that much more interesting. And a price had gone on the kid's head for $5,000. And there were always sightings of him here or there, but the kid kept on the move. And he would go back to San Carlos Reservation from time to time to steal a woman. He didn't like being alone, and he would steal 2 young women, usually 2 he would have, as his squaws in those days. Okay? Because the squaws did the cooking, the cleaning, and all that stuff. It was unmanly of him to do this. So he always went back and stole. But then he'd take off into the mountains. And you never know where he was going to show up. He was accused of many, many crimes he could not have committed. But nevertheless, one of the places that he would hide when he went up there was north. They never thought that he would go north into where all the soldiers were, that in that particular area, but he had a supply of food because from there you can see Jim Bark's ranch, and you could see the cowboys leaving the ranch, he said. And when the cowboys left, he would get down and take food. Now, Jim Bark knew the Apache Kid, and he made kind of a deal with the Apache Kid, and he said, look, I'll leave it unlocked, you don't destroy the things, and there'll be food for you, take what you need. You don't take it all, but you take what you need. And don't ever accost any of my cowboys. And so he did. And as time went by, there was another person that known Apache Kid, and he said, if Jim had tried to call him Jim, he called him Jeem, G-E-E-M. Jeem, I have passed him many times in the mountains. If he had ever betrayed me, I could have killed him. You tell Jeem, I could have killed him at any time, but he never did. But that cave was so secluded and hard to see because it was in the shadows beneath 3 huge rock formations nicknamed by somebody the 3 Sisters. And there are 3 points that stick up. They're huge. I'd like to see a rock climber climb up those, but you know, that cave was fantastic because I'd heard about all these caves in the mountains where they could not hold a candle to the Apache Kid's cave. That was a fascinating place to be. If you ever have a chance to do it, I'll show you my way that I learned of going laterally rather than going vertically. You got to boulder a little bit, but then you're right there at the Kid's Cave.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.